Welcome to part number 24 of the Minish Cap playthrough. We're in the second part of Dark Hyrule Castle, and this part is slightly different than the beginning of the temple. In the first area of the temple, it was pretty linear. It was mostly a straight path as long as you knew what you were doing, but this part is sort of non-linear. Your objective is to get 4 small keys so you can get the big key and then confront Vaati. So, it's not that hard to understand. Just watch the video and you should get it perfectly fine. So instead of talking about this temple, I'm going to talk about something else. Now, if you remember in one of the previous videos, I talked about my Game Boy Advance memories. So I'm going to do that again, except with Game Boy, just plain old Game Boy and Game Boy Color. I'm going to lump them together because I grew up with both of them, so yeah. I think most of my time playing the Game Boy was spent on Pokemon games. Now, I played every single Pokemon game on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, all 6 of them, red, blue, yellow, silver, crystal, and gold. I think my first one was silver. I can't exactly remember. Maybe my first one was blue. I don't quite know. It was my brother who introduced me to the Pokemon game, so I'm not exactly sure. But I think it was silver. Later on, I played Crystal, and Crystal is still my favorite Pokemon game to this day. It's just perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. And I played so much Pokemon as a kid. I remember bringing my Game Boy to school, and I would play Pokemon during recess and sometimes during class, you know, because that's what we did in elementary school. At my school, it was Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I was one of those kids that played Pokemon while most of the other kids were playing Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I never really got into the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I really don't get the appeal. It's like, I don't know, they just seem really strange to me, so I never really got into it. I was one of those kids that played Pokemon, and I did collect the cards, but I don't have them anymore. I don't really know what happened to them. I can't find them. I have tried looking for them. I don't know what happened to them, but I'm not really concerned because it's not like I had a giant collection. It was a rather small collection. It was contained in one 3-ring binder, so I'm not at a loss. I'm not devastated that I can't find my precious Pokemon cards. I don't care. I mean, I had a lot of fun collecting the cards, and I never actually learned how to play the game, like the game with the cards. Like I never understood how to play it, and none of my friends did either. We just liked collecting the cards, and that's what I did. So pretty much most of my time was spent playing the Pokemon games, and I would have fun. Sometimes me and my brother, we'd just start up like red and blue or gold and silver, and we would try to race each other to the end. And I had fun doing that. It's just, Pokemon was a lot of fun, and then you got to battle your friends, and Pokemon to me, it was a big part of my childhood, and I kind of drifted away from the series. I still haven't played Generation 5, what is it, Black and White, and I kind of want to play them, but I can't find the time, and I don't feel like buying them. It's just, I can't find the time, and eventually I will get to play them, but right now I just don't have the time. And I do want to get back into the series because I think they're releasing, what is it, like Black and White 2? I don't know, that could be interesting. I didn't play the original Black and White, but I don't know, it could be interesting. But I didn't only play Pokemon as a kid. I played a lot of obscure games. Like, I played this 2D shooter called S11, I think it was called. I'm pretty sure it was called S11. And I had a lot of fun with that game. I've never actually looked up reviews of it to see if anyone else thinks it's a good game, but I had a lot of fun with it, and I will do a playthrough on that game at some point if you've never heard of it, which you probably haven't. I think it's pretty obscure, but it's a lot of fun. It was made by Sunsoft, and you may have heard of Sunsoft before. And it was It's just a really great game. Or maybe it was just a great game in my childhood. I haven't played it in a while, so it might not be the best thing ever. But as a kid, I had a lot of fun playing it. So at some point, I'm gonna play it again, record it, and I'll do a playthrough on it and see if my opinion has changed at all. Because it's probably been, I don't know, 10 years since I last played it. So I remember it well, but I don't know. We'll see. I'll play it again. I also played this racing game. I can't remember the name of it. It was a Lego racing game, though. I can't think of the name of it, but you raced Lego cars, and it was a lot of fun. Or at least I remember it being fun. Maybe it's not that good nowadays, but I'm gonna visit that game again. And I also had some other games, some puzzle games. I think there's this puzzle game I have. I think it's called, I think it's just called Yoshi, actually. And I never really liked the game. I didn't really get it. It was, I don't exactly remember it. But I have to say, one of my favorite games on the Game Boy Color was a game called Kirby Tilt and Tumble. And it was a really strange game. Basically, you would have to tilt your Game Boy, and that would control Kirby. Like, Kirby's in sort of a ball form, and you have to roll him around. And it was just, it was a lot of fun. I never actually beat the game. I remember trying so hard to beat the game as a kid, but I could never do it. It was such a hard game, and it was just a lot of fun because at the time, technology hadn't really advanced to that point yet where we had all these unique ways to play games, and to me it was just the greatest thing ever. It was, you got to tilt your Game Boy around, and it just felt so cool, and I absolutely loved it. It was, even though I was terrible at it and I could never beat it, I still had so much fun playing it. It was, I can't really explain it, and I don't think I'll ever do a playthrough on it, simply because if I tried to play it, I still wouldn't be able to beat it. Now, I probably would be able to, but I would have some trouble with it, let's say, so I don't know, it's just, it was one of those games, like, as a kid, there was just some games where I just struggled with, but I had to beat them because I was just so determined to beat games as a kid. That was always my goal when I went into a game. It was, I had to beat it. I had to beat the game and see the ending, but that was my goal as a kid, and now I've kind of made it to the point where beating the game just isn't enough. You have to do it in some crazy way. But Kirby Tilt and Tumble, if you've ever played it, you know what I'm talking about. And if you can find a copy of it, try to find one. It's probably a pretty rare game. It may be, I don't know, but if you can find a copy for a reasonable price and you have a Game Boy, then try it out. I will warn you though, if you don't have an original Game Boy Color, the game will not work properly. Do not try to play the game in a Game Boy SP. It does not work. Something with the tilting mechanic just doesn't work on the Game Boy Advance SP. It does not work. So if you don't have an original Game Boy Color, don't even bother because it just doesn't work. Luckily though, I do have 2 Game Boy Colors. One is mine, one is my brother's. He doesn't play it anymore, so I took it in. And I really don't play mine anymore. I mean, I usually just use my Game Boy Advance SP for any Game Boy Color game I want to play. Like if I want to play Pokemon Gold, I put it in my SP because that has a backlight, and I remember the days of portable gaming without a backlight. I mean, it was terrible. Without a backlight, you cannot see unless the lighting conditions are optimal, and you always got that glare, and it was so hard to play your games. And when the Game Boy Advance SP came out, I just had to have it because it had a backlight, and I am so glad I bought it. I mean, it is, to me, that was the greatest thing. Having a backlight, I mean, why didn't they think of that before? I mean, I know they didn't have the technology for it, but still, I mean, that was the greatest thing to me when that came out. I mean, some of you probably are too young to remember that, and you've probably grown up with systems that have had backlights, but me, that was the greatest thing ever. And I loved it, and I still do love my Game Boy Advance SP. It's fantastic. Anyways, once you get all 4 of these small keys, you can get the big key. Then you can use the blue portal to go to the red portal, which will lead you to the boss door. And we're not going to take on the final boss in part number 25. We have a few things we need to take care of before we go there. But in part number 26, we will take on the final boss of the game and see the ending. I'll see you in part 25.